When did you realize that by not dating or hanging around a certain person was actually dodging a major bullet? When she told me that we couldn't hang out anymore and got mad when I accepted it. Girl I dated once pulled the "oh we should just break up" then backpedaled real fast when I agreed. I was only joking. I wasn't. After I broke up with my ex I stopped crying every night. Can definitely relate to this. Glad you are doing better now. Met a guy in the local nerd community. We hit it off. Start becoming more than friends. He's moving too fast and I wasn't feeling it. So I end it. A month later he disappears from social media. 3 months later. Still complete silence. I got curious and started searching. Found that he'd been arrested for sexual acts with a minor. Met a chick who was beautiful. In passing conversation she had said her boyfriend has cancer and she feels like it should affect her emotionally but she just didn't care. He died. I quickly passed on that one and met the best woman ever. Ironically I now have terminal cancer and she is the best mother of our kids. Wife and support life could have given me. When I realized that she had to put down every single thing I did or wanted to do because she couldn't stand me doing better than her at anything. She only liked me when I was as miserable as she was and would do anything to get me there. I'm so glad you're out of that toxic dynamic. Me too. There was so much more going on in addition to that behavior but it drove me over the edge of realizing that she's not a friend and she was filling my life with the most awful energy imaginable so it was worth the depression and the pain. Met a girl at a bar and did a drunk hookup. She wanted to meet up again and I figured okay we were both drunk so I really don't know how she is sober. End up going out with my buddies and their girlfriends. She then proceeds to take a bunch of pics with them within the first half hour of meeting them and uploading them on Facebook. Asks me to go spend a weekend at her parents' place. And basically clinging on to me the whole night and getting pissed if I would talk to one of my buddies over her even for a quick minute. Decided it was too much and told her it was moving too fast. This led to her texting and calling me every night and driving by my house every day to see if my car was there. Also every bar I would go to I would end up running into her. Didn't realize this until I saw on my Snapchat that she could see where I was. She scared the shit out of me. Was in a church youth group with the Catholic priest's niece. I was like 14 years old. Came on to me very hard. But I was really a bit immature at the time. 6 months later she was pregnant and definitely having that baby. I would have had a very different life than I do now. Yeah but think of it this way bro. If you have a kid at 14. By the time you're 35 he'd be 21 and you guys could totally hang out at bars together and try to impregnate other women together. That would be worth it. Guy I was friends with in elementary and middle school but then had a falling out in high school over something stupid and we never reconnected. I felt a little bad about it but then years later I saw him on the news cause he got arrested for filming up girls' skirts with a hidden camera at the CNE affair. Needless to say I stopped feeling bad about our falling out after that. I hadn't seen a friend in person for like 6 months. Because she had gotten into dealing and I wasn't willing to be around it. I went to visit and meet her baby. And out comes a lockbox of random pills and Drew Gus. That was the last time we hung out. Now she's a druggie with 3 kids who have been taken away. This is very recent. I was supposed to go on a date with a guy only yesterday, Saturday. I had met him on POF. Chatted for about a week and a half and then planned to go for lunch. Despite the fact I kept telling him to go slow as this was my first date since becoming single. The breakup has messed me up a bit and I was still feeling fragile etc. It was like I never said any of that at all. He wanted me to French kiss him the moment I met up with him and kept saying things like I'm gonna give you the best date so your mum is proud of me and I'm gonna be charming and you're gonna fall. So it got to Friday and I realized I really didn't want to go anymore. I even posted on the anxiety thread on here as it had set me off. I eventually cancelled and said I think we're expecting different things from this date. He then told me he thought I was immature anyway. Yesterday morning he sent me a message that said "Bieik." Oh how I laughed. previous boyfriend. We were only together for like a month. 3 years after breakup I was bored and stalking some old friends and found his Tumblr. It was not anonymous. And full of really weird hentai. His girlfriend had written a post about how he had made her sad. But then had let her blow him to make her feel better. And he had commented on that post saying he only made her upset so she would stop being a hunt. Bullet dodged. When I found out he was involved in a cult and wanted to get me involved with it too. Rookie mistake. As the only sane one there, it wouldn't be hard to become the leader. I know, right? That sheet is like stealing candy from a baby. Definitely not something where sheet could go wrong real fast. My roommate, who I considered my big brother figure, had a wolf husky that bit me. I hid it from him and told him I had cut my hand doing something else because he was going through out of sheet and I didn't want to stress him out. The dog became aggressive with me again and I had to lock it in a room. I called him and told him what had been going on and he yelled at me about my puppy, who has permanent scars on his face from this other dog, peeing on the carpet. I probably should have told him right away because I'm sure that was a lot to take in at once. But he didn't show an inkling of concern for me and just tried to start putting blame in me for unrelated shit. I started to talking to a girl I work with. First off, bad move on my part from the word go. Don't date co-workers, folks. So we started hanging out. Going out for drinks. Dinner. And things were quickly moving towards sex. Something told me to pump the brakes and slow down a bit. So I did. We keep hanging out. But then she starts calling me on my way to work every night. Not a problem. I enjoy the company on the drive. Then it quickly changes into don't go to work tonight. Come by me instead. Okay, yeah, no. I'm not going to start calling into work to be with you. Then every night turned into she wants to heal herself. Stomp the brakes. Put that idea through the windshield. I'm not going to lie. I stayed talking to her because I thought I could help her through this. Nope. It continued. Almost every night. She was now on stress leave from work because she was suicidal. And every night she needed me to call in and come by her to keep her safe. After so long I told her I couldn't do this anymore and we haven't talked since. She never came back from stress leave. Come to find out she was already ducking some other guy at work. I didn't mind. It's all you, bro. Then she gave him herpes. Bullet very dodged. I would have been stuck. Probably for life with some girl who called me every night wanting to heal herself and I can't leave because she gave me herpes. Several years ago, a dude who was a waiter at a restaurant in the shopping center where I worked started crushing on me for a couple of weeks. He first came up to me one day when I was in line at a drugstore in the complex. I had never even seen him before then. But he started in right away with oddly persistent questions that had more to do with trying to ask me out rather than attempting to get to know me first. I started getting nervous for some reason and hastily told him I had to go back to my store. Well, a few days later he showed up there and managed to corner me and ask me all the same shit. More persistently this time. Now, I hate it when guys try to ask me out when I'm on the job, since they're somewhat exploiting the fact that I have to be polite and attentive to people when they come into shop. So I put on my best fake smiley retail face and turned him down more forcefully this time. Not a week after that, I heard that he had been fired for instigating a shouting match which quickly escalated into a fist fight with one of the other waiters at the place where he worked. During dinner hours. Lost nearly an entire fringer up because of one manipulative person. I was codependent and gaslit and manipulated so much that I thought my world was ending when it came crashing down. About a year out now and I'm no longer a functional alcoholic. I have a group of friends who actually give a shit about me. And my relationships are all give and take. Support and be supported. I don't know what the old group is up to. And I don't particularly care. As long as they stay far away from me. I'm great. Was talking to this girl for a couple months in 11th grade. Didn't pan out though. A few months go by. Senior year starts. and the whole school is abuzz with talk of her being incarcerated for stabbing her boyfriend. When she admitted to lying about something big about her life for weeks. For no good reason. And I realized how many other things she's lied about over the course of years that I swept under the rug. I felt like it was important to me to forgive her every time and always told myself it wasn't that big of a deal anyway. But eventually someone you trust, who supposedly trusts you, lies to you enough times that it all falls apart and you realize you can't honestly know that she's ever telling the truth anymore, even about mundane things. It really sucks. Too. Because she and I knew each other pretty well and she was going through some of the worst times of her life when I reached my limit with her. I want to be there for her through the tough times. But I just can't be friends with someone who I feel unnecessarily betrayed by all the time. I dated a gay homophobe. She used to buy me clothes and pick out my outfits in order to keep me looking a certain way and had some serious sexual hang-ups. She would often tell me it was unacceptable to be holding hands at events where there were children. And she refused to let me go to the Pride Parade because she didn't want me shoving my identity in people's faces. I thought she was just a closet case. But after our relationship ended, I realized how much she hated herself. And how much she made me hate myself. Yikes. This one guy. A sci-fi fantasy geek type about 20 years old. Who used to hang around the local coffee shop. He did sometimes appear in women's clothing. But that wasn't an issue. The issue was his insisting on talking to everyone about the 12-year-old girl he was in love with, from afar. He sat down with me one day. Started in on his love obsession story. And I told him I didn't want to hear it. Because I didn't want to be a witness at his trial. And I never talked to him again. I met a guy at a party and we hit it off. Hung out the following night and then 2 days later he was arrested for armed robbery. Spent 4 years in prison. Definitely wasn't boyfriend material. Yeah, BF material doesn't get caught. I avoided girls who always had to go out, get drunk, be the center of attention or the life of the party. I found that to be really unattractive. A friend of mine was engaged to a girl like that and was head over heels in love with her. Not only did she cheat on him with his friends, she gave him very explicit details of it all once she was caught to hurt him even worse. When he talked about when we get married on our second day of dating. We hadn't even kissed yet. Manipulative behavior to extract favors and loans. Exeunt. Chased by a bear. I was out of there. Can we hear more on the chased by a bear aspect? Did they owe the bear on loans? It's from A Winter's Tale by Shakespeare. The stage directions for a character in a particular scene say exit. Pursued by a bear. It's well known in theater circles as being one of the funniest stage directions written in a script. Edit. Autocorrect thinks it's A Winter's Take. When I realized that he was a high-functioning alcoholic whose pastime consisted of only getting blackout drunk and bitching about everything around them. Turns out while he insisted that I was one of the cool ones, he complains about me behind my back. Also, for different person. When I found out they didn't like David Bowie. My ex's mom got really drunk and kissed me with tongue during a Christmas party at her sister's house. On the way home after, I told my ex about it and she defended her mom, saying we're a close family. You just wouldn't understand. When after my ex and I broke up, he married another woman a few years later and became extremely religious. All of a sudden he had a huge problem with gay marriage and thought it was unnatural, even though when we dated in college he had several gay friends and was the most accepting person you could ever meet. He would rant about it on Facebook and get into arguments with people on Facebook all the time. No. Thanks. Tom Hanks. Bullet dodged. A girl I dated in college told me her only previous boyfriend was emotionally and physically abusive. And she hadn't gotten any therapy. Given that she was the first girl I seriously dated, I didn't think I had the maturity level needed to continue on. I was right. I was acquainted with someone who always asked me about what drama was going on and always wanted to gossip about happenings. I never really responded to her as I don't enjoy that type of talk, especially with near strangers. A few months later I find out that she sends lewd messages to minors on Facebook. She lives in a different country than most of the people she messaged, so it's hard for her to be reported. She would often send messages to people about her sex life and asked if people were virgins. She also advanced on someone telling that she'd be willing to do it with someone to prove that the person she messaged was bi. Glad I never responded to her. He put on a lot of weight and started randomly messaging me on Facebook one night. He was engaged at the time. I'm so glad I ended that mess when I did. I would hate to be engaged to someone who habitually messaged random girls for hookup. It took me 5 years, if you can believe this. It was a very stressful relationship. She somehow knew exactly how to cause the most amount of stress and pain in the depths of my soul. We were engaged and I was trying to marry her and nail down a date for a wedding. But despite being together for a few years, she kept dodging it. Finally, after 5 years, I realized if we stay together I'll probably die by 40 of a heart attack or a cardiac arrest. I broke it off and moved on. And believe it or not, I regained my black hair within 6 months. I started growing some white hair around my temples while in that relationship. Bullet dodged for sure. The only real issue I have with questions like these is we are supposed to believe the answers as told from the perspective of the answerer. I understand some, maybe most, of these are legit. But some of them sound like we need to hear the other side the story. Yeah, you're right. And it's not just exclusive to this thread either. People on this site always seem to be the ones in the right when they recount stories. Very few people here seem to reflect with honesty on the past and take accountability for their own shit actions. When his ex finally contacted me and told me he had been emotionally, verbally, and sexually abusive, it wasn't until after I had ended things that I noticed there were red flags. When you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. Just a couple of nights ago, I got a call from a friend I hadn't seen in many years. I spoke to her about 2 years ago and I was headed to Las Vegas. She said she wanted to go with me and I was planning on her coming to town. She lives somewhere else and going with me. She flaked out the last minute and I didn't hear back from her even though the plans were pretty concrete. I haven't contacted her since, and 2 nights ago, she called me randomly. Turns out she's homeless now and looking for a place to live. But after listening to her talk, she's nuts. She claims that her mother and father are crazy. Her 2 sisters are crazy. Her ex-husband is crazy. The social worker that took away her son is crazy. And on and on. Turns out, it seems pretty obvious that she's the crazy one. Guy I got acquainted with in a summer program for swimming lessons. I think we were like 9 and I already thought he's an asshole because he keeps pestering me to get rid of my swimming trunks so he can see my crotch whenever the instructor isn't looking. Me and a couple of other girls that he also harassed would always push into the pool. If it's a bad day we would mess with his floaties. Don't worry. We're on a 4-foot deep pool, but he didn't know that. He's also the only one I didn't keep in touch with that summer. Fast forward to 2015. 16-year-old me saw his name on the news. Headlines read: Uber driver sexually assaulted passenger, tried to force his sole female passenger who rode shotgun to give him head. Her phone was recording the whole thing and he was caught very quickly after. In my country, attempted rape is guaranteed to give you a life sentence. His bail is set around $300,000. Still in the slammer. Last I heard of him.